Hey guys, Don here. Welcome to Podiatry Practice Mastery. I'm going to go over the things that help get to the $1,000,000 mark and beyond. I have started something called a positive focus every single day. I'm just kind of getting it out here as I go through this with you. So I find when I go through hard times, and I'm speaking specifically to my medical record here, I like to do a positive focus. I like to write 10 good things each day at the end of the day to help my mindset. And so I'm on day number 7 for my ModMed. So let me go over my positive focus here. So I did a template for warts. I did another one for Cariflex. I'm getting the level of visit that I want, so similar to Athena, I'm getting the levels in 3s and 4s that I'm used to. Clara is working better. That's the kind of the chat bot thing that they're doing. Morali is starting to do the notes. I'm getting closer to some other friends that I haven't had contact in a while because they're really good at ModMed, and so I've reached out and asked for help. And I didn't emotionally eat yesterday because of ModMed, and I'm learning some new techniques to kind of get through the stressful times. And I had the courage. I think I was talking yesterday about I was asked to do a lecture, and it didn't resonate with me. I wasn't too convinced about the product, and I didn't want to be really, at this point anyway, associated with it because I think it's, in my opinion, it's a good product. It's just not as great as maybe some other ones, and I just feel like it might not be a good fit for me to do that talk. So I had the courage to talk to someone about that. I also reached out to a chiropractor that reached out to me just to make friends, so kind of a new contact. And I learned that we can still use Patient Education Genius within ModMed. You just have to copy and paste the email or the phone number. And I also recorded, if you've heard that the other day, my one-page review, which is kind of like my one-page notes for the month. And I've been doing my listening a couple of times a week to my Pocket Coach, which just means my goals for the month. I'm finding it a lot easier for me to listen to my goals than it is to read them. Maybe I'm more auditory. That maybe is like why I'm liking podcast more than writing things. And it really kind of keeps my focus on my goals for the quarter and kind of refreshes them. So, if you guys want to listen to them, you can go back and listen to it. I think it's called a podcast on Pocket Coach. But not that you have to do it that way, but maybe you take your recording thing on your phone and you record your goals and then you just listen to them daily. So I think it's a couple times a week. I just find it keeps my focus on what's really important. It reminds me, because when I get in the busyness of life, I tend to forget about the things that I had planned before. When I had more, insight, because we tend to be getting in the busyness of things. I'm also, when I'm kind of going through difficult times like this, I'm reading this book called Peaks and Valleys. It's by the same guy that wrote Who Moved My Cheese, and it's a good book, and it kind of talks about the peaks and valleys approach to life, and it's in a parable format. So there's a couple of other ones. There's another book I read recently called Go for No, and it was also a parable format. And with this peaks and valleys, we talk about, I feel like I'm living a valley right now with this medical record. And he asks a couple of things. Like, there's a couple of questions, almost like self-coaching questions you should ask yourself. And I wrote these out. And this kind of helps my mindset. What's the truth of the situation? Well, the truth of the ModMed right now is that it's sucking less right now because we're getting the hang of it. It was kind of a bad, hard time. But the other truth is that we were super users with the other EMR, and I know we're going to get to be super users here, and we're actually I think it's going to make us better because we're going to learn to set up things a little bit better in our office. It's going to make our office better. What I mean by that is there's an app within Office 365 called SharePoint, where I think it's going to be a great place to put our standardized operating procedures, protocols for the office. I think it's going to make it better for the office in general for revenue because the billing is kind of included in there. And ultimately, these are things that I like to do, and I did this with Athena, and I can kind of make content on ModMed to help other doctors, hopefully to not make it as bad as this one was. So that's for that was kind of what's the truth of the situation, and then kind of what's the benefit in it. So they talk about, like, in bad times, kind of what is the good that could come out of it. Or another way, I know another guy says, why did this happen for me? Like, what's the positive thing? What this does is this takes into account your own what's it called? Accountability, responsibility. I think a lot of times we like to abdicate and just complain about situations where we can see, I think there's a way to look at a positive thing, like why did this happen for me? Like why is it good that we are doing ModMed? And I think there's a lot of good that's coming from it. I think it's bringing me closer to my staff because we're all kind of commiserating together, but we're all learning something new. We're encouraging the staff. We're kind of working together as a doctors. We're kind of pulling together to develop new processes for the practice. So I think there's a lot of good things, and I think by writing these things down every day, it's helping my mindset while I'm going through the difficult time. Because the idea of peaks and valleys is we all go through valleys, but it's what you do during the valley that are going to make your peaks so much better. So I think, probably after 30 days, maybe even less, maybe 14 days, I'm going to be up and running with ModMed. It's going to be better for Morali, like he's starting to do notes now, and I think it's going to be good. Okay. I used to kind of go through my patient schedule. I'm a little bit, how do you say it? I haven't quite figured out a great way to print out my schedule and take notes on it yet, but I want to point out a couple of patients. I guess my MVP patient yesterday, most valuable patient, was a patient, he got bilateral plantar fasciitis and he had bilateral shockwave. So that is a large check, right? So he had 6 sessions, that'd be $3,000 because it's $1,500 a piece. And then at the last session, like this is always great, is he asked me, well, are we going to do orthotics now? And so he reminded me, and then we were able to scan him for orthotics. So let me explain how this happened. It happened because on my initial visit, and what I always tell patients when we're doing shockwave, that we're going to do shockwave now. Once the pain starts to go down, then we're going to make you orthotics to correct the mechanics of your foot that kind of caused it. And that I kind of keep it simple like that. I used to go into a lot more detail, explaining the biomechanics and things like that, but I just find saying that works well. And he came back to me and reminded me, because I didn't remember at the 3rd session. Usually I do it at the 3rd session, but with all this transition stuff, we didn't do that. And so he was able to do the orthotics scan. So that was a good thing, and I've been finding that. Another patient was referred from another doctor. They had an os peroneum within the peroneus brevis, and they were treated in another facility, and they recommended them over for shockwave. So they saw me, and I went over kind of the 2 options. You could do cortisone in there with a boot, or you could do shockwave. And I recommended the shockwave. They wanted to think about it, and they came back and they did it. So I think one thing for us when you're doing a lot of shockwave is to have the confidence to do what's best for the patient. I did give them the option. I would have done the cortisone in the boot, but I don't think it works as well. And so they opted for the shockwave. So we did that, and they set up the 6 sessions for that. So just something to think about is you have to have the confidence to have patients kind of walk away, and you recommend what's the best thing for them. And this has taken time to learn to do this, versus just kind of what is the simplest thing. I feel like in the last few days, while I've been getting used to the medical record, I'm just kind of doing what's quickest. Like I've been doing more cortisone, only because I didn't know how to document other things, and the cortisone's a little bit easier, and it speeds me up a little bit. But in the long run, kind of going on forward, now I can return back to my typical, because I'm trying to learn how to dispense DME, how to do all these other things for the patient. But it's getting a little bit better, sucking a little bit less. So I'm hoping just to share kind of how things are going this way. Okay, thanks guys. Have a good day.